presentation of Financial Crisis Recovery.
Foreclosure, short sales, bankruptcy, credit card debt, job loss, depreciating home values, money management. Peace of mind when it comes to your finances seems completely out of reach under current conditions, but there is a way to achieve it. For the next 60 minutes, you're going to find out how to cover your assets. Cover your assets.
No place to, harbor our money. So do you think that I should just pay off the house or just leave it?
Well, first of all, let me just say that I can so relate. I grew up sitting on a farm in Crookston, Minnesota, next to my grandfather who lived through the Depression, and I learned about, as you probably did, WPA and what a horrible situation that was. And I learned about how you want to own everything that you have, so that basically nobody can take it away. Is that kind of what your dad taught you as well?
Yes, exactly. My first loan was, I was 18 years old. I bought a car. We went into the bank, and the banker said, well, you want to co-sign? And my dad says, no, I want her savings account to be the collateral for it. So in other words, she can't ever owe more on the car than she has in savings. So my very first loan at 18, I think that's why my credit score is so good, because I have always, that was a very valuable lesson my dad taught me. But I'm not sure a lot of people hear that message today. Kay,
you and I agree. I think there's a major distinction between the people who grew up listening to someone who went through the Depression and had a relationship, and those who did not. There's just you literally can just about draw a line in the sand. You got one group of people who doesn't know anybody who's ever missed a payment, pays everything they have in full, and pays it off as fast as they can. Then you got another group of people who misses payments all the time, and the only thing they're really interested in is what is the monthly mortgage payment or what is the monthly car payment, not necessarily when or how they're going to pay it off. So it's a big distinction that you make, and you and I could have a cup of coffee and talk for hours, I'm sure of it. And by the way, one other thing I do want to bring up, which is the fundamentals of money management. It is not complicated. The complexity of money management is half of the reason that it goes wrong, and people like to make it complex because that way they can lose themselves in the numbers and essentially justify anything that they want to hear. So the straightforward stuff we're going to talk about more on the show. Back to your question, which is that should you pay your house off? Well, there's a number of things to consider, but before we even get into the complexity of it, I'll just simply tell you this. Having a house paid for free and clear is somewhat of its own reward. I mean, that in and of itself, meaning that I almost don't care what else I say to you, because you and I both know that the goal of having that is something that people of your generation and mine have always dreamed of, and there's more to it than just pure the money. It's just about when I no longer have a mortgage payment and I know that that is taken care of for the rest of my life. So that's right. That alone may, anything else I say may pale in comparison, because that's more important to you and to people like me than anything else. With that, let's look at the interest rate that you have on your house. What is it? What is the current rate?
It's 6.5.
6.5%.
Yep.
So essentially, you're paying what's known as debt service on that loan of 6.5%. However, you brought up a very interesting point, which is that most mortgages today, guys, are front-end loaded mortgages, where essentially all the interest is on the front end that is paid within the first 10 years. And after that, you begin to pretty much eat up principal, which means much of your interest write-off that you would ordinarily get is gone at this point, and you get very little tax write-off on that payment, because the majority of those payments at the point where you are, Kay, I suspect, is all principal, and you don't have much of a write-off at the end of the year. So, if you're earlier into that mortgage, remember, mortgage companies and banks aren't stupid. They know that most people refinance every 3 to 5 years, and they move every 5 to 7 years. Now, obviously, those are statistics before the 2006 real estate meltdown, but nonetheless, they know that even with 30-year fixed-rate mortgages, most people are simply paying interest up front, and then they refinance, and they never really get into the principal. That's a different situation for you.
Right.
So you're into that principal. You don't have a lot of interest write-off. So we don't need to spend a lot of time considering what the tax benefit is to you, because for the most part, that has diminished quite significantly here.
Right.
Beyond that, we look at what the return on investment would be to get essentially the same thing, because any money you're going to put towards the mortgage is money that you could also put in an investment.
Right.
And so, assuming that we're going to stay away from the tax issue, because it sounds like you're already fully funding your qualified plans, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. So we have nothing. We don't want to get into that because there's really no benefit with those dollars in the investment side, meaning you're going to have to pay tax on most other investments we get into, annuities, and somebody who's an insurance person or a financial advisor get frustrated with that. But that's not the money going in. That's the actual money that's being made, return on investment. So in your situation, you got to say, could I get a guaranteed 6.5% rate? And it isn't as simple as this, a little more complicated, but could I get a 6.5% interest rate guaranteed on the same money that I'm putting towards the mortgage? The answer is absolutely not. Not a chance. And so to do away with that 6.5%, well, that would be significant. And remember, though, you're paying all principal. I think in this situation for you, having this house paid off free and clear, I think is a good thing. There are times, Kay, where if your home, you were just beginning in this process, and the value of homes was going down, and as a result, you could pay extra money towards that and then choose to move 2 to 3 years later, and now the home has declined in value. When you went to sell it, you'd not get that money back. But in your situation, you have so much of your mortgage paid down that you're already there, and any money that you pay into that mortgage to pay that house off, you will get back. So I think without a doubt, it would be a good plan to continue to pay off your mortgage. You're fully funding your retirement accounts. I would put those probably in front of paying down the home first. But since you're already fully funding those, then the next best place for you to put that money, especially at this point in your mortgage path, is to pay that house down now. So it sounds like a great plan, Kay.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your help.
All right. All right.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. So let's continue. Where do people make mistakes when it comes to money management? First of all, they don't fully appreciate what they're spending. And what do I mean by that? I mean that they essentially, when they do their budget, they sit down at a kitchen table and they put numbers into a spreadsheet. Now listen, that they wish they were only spending. I don't mean they're using historical numbers, and I don't mean that they're using real numbers that exist in their heads, because ironically, the numbers that exist in your head are more accurate than anybody wants to give them credit for. And I'll give you an example. If your son or daughter has a birthday party to attend, and the child that they're attending the birthday party also attended your child's birthday party, they live next door, they live in the same cul-de-sac, or they go to the same school, or maybe they're your brother or sister-in-law's child, let me guarantee you that when you walk into Target or when you walk into Walmart or when you walk into Macy's or wherever you go, you've already got a number in your mind that you know you're going to spend on that particular gift or that item. If you go through a person's finances and you ask them those questions, how much they'll spend on each individual person for each individual occasion, you will be shocked at how accurate those numbers are. So most people don't use those numbers. They put numbers in a spreadsheet that invariably just happen to balance perfectly and in a very tidy way at the bottom of the spreadsheet, which has virtually no validity in real life. That's the interesting thing. So they sit down at the kitchen table, they write down all the bills that are sitting there in front of them, they fluff the numbers to make them all look good, and then they look at the take-home pay or the pay cycles that they'll have between now and the end of the month, and they calculate that against the expenses that they've come up with on a spreadsheet. And surprise, surprise, everything looks wonderful. And they say, my goodness, thank the good Lord, we're going to be able to make the payments this month. Everything should be just fine. And then the end of the month comes, and those very same people would swear to you that somebody must have stolen the money out of their checking account because there's not enough money to pay all the bills at the end of the month. Where did the money go? Well, they forgot about Christmas, birthdays, anniversaries, Mother's Day, Father's Day, going out to eat, fishing, hunting, movies, dance lessons, musical instruments. None of that stuff, hockey, was anywhere to be found in their budget. It was just the simple, straightforward stuff. So when they put that in there, all of a sudden the vehicle maintenance, the tires that have already got 40,000 miles on them, and you just can't understand why those tires won't go for 200,000 miles. You just can't understand it, Give me a break. These are things that should have been in the budget long before. But when people do things like, as an example, vehicle maintenance, the only thing they build in is the oil changes. And when they get the car paid off, they jump for joy and they say, thank the good Lord, we don't have any car payments any longer. And the fact of the matter is you need to continue paying nearly as much as the car payment to keep the vehicle on the road. And you need to keep your hands off of that money, and you need to escrow it, and nobody does this stuff. So when the water pump goes out and the car's got 140,000 miles on it, people are angry at the world because they can't believe that the car has got problems with 140,000 miles because the water pump goes out or the timing belt goes, and it was as imminent as the sun coming up in the morning. But they chose not to look at that because if they had done that, their budget wouldn't have balanced and they wouldn't have been able to take the family vacation, right? So there's first thing that people do wrong. They don't fully appreciate what they're spending because, quite frankly, they don't want to know. Second issue that people have with money management is that they reconcile the budget to see how they've done at the end of the month when it's too late to do anything. Or they look at an entire year in arrears, meaning the year has elapsed, and because you bank at a certain bank that offers a service like Quicken where you can just simply download it into all the different categories, and then you obviously really know how to manage your money, so you push a button and it puts it all into a spreadsheet for you, and then you use that as historical data. However, remember, you spend way more money in the summertime when you're going to the lake, when you're going to the cabin, when you're driving all over the place than you do possibly in the winter. And I'm not saying it could be different for every person, but the point is that an average looking back over the course of the last year does you absolutely nothing month by month, especially if you have no available credit to tie you over for the ebb and flow of life. And therein lies where people begin to go bad. And they believe because they've never had a problem before when they had tens of thousands of dollars of available credit. Now that they don't, they have to live on their income to the dollar. They've never had to do it. And the ebb and flow of life, that alone is enough to create major problems for them. So number one, they don't fully appreciate what they're spending. Number two, they reconcile their accounts at the end of the month when it's too late to do anything about it. And again, the ebb and flow of month to month is enough to throw their whole budget upside down, that alone. And, you know, when you think about that, remember that people are looking at, you know, the cost of gasoline. And I've got financial advisors, they come in and they say, you know, hey, my grocery bill's $600. And I say, well, you know, that's not right. And I'm looking at them across the desk and I can see where they're getting it. They're reading it off a spreadsheet that is giving them an average from the last year. And I say, you do understand that the cost of groceries statistically has gone up 29% in the last year. And so if I take the path of the increase of those commodities, groceries, over the course of the year, by the end of the year, they're significantly less. And you're taking the low at the beginning of the year, the high at the end of the year, and you're averaging it out. And the reality is it's absolutely incorrect. Wow. That's right. I never thought about it. And by the way, as it relates to groceries, I've never seen so many people as a family of four, small American family, telling me they're spending $800 to $1,000 a month on groceries. So the cost of these things is horrendous. So the point is, if you're reconciling at the end of the month when it's too late to do anything about it, what good does it do you other than to make you depressed? And at that point, the only thing you can say is, I'll try to do better next month. But of course, at the end of the month, you won't know until that month is over either. And at that point, you've now become so depressed, you stop looking at it. So we're going to come back. We're going to talk about how we're going to manage the money to ensure that we control spending throughout the course of the month so it works out exactly as it should at the end of every single month, not reconciling when the month is over. Let's take our break and we'll come back and talk about that. Thank you for continuing to listen and support our Cover Your Assets radio show. We're talking about money management today. We have a caller on the phone. His name is George, and George has a question about buying a house, I believe. George, go ahead. You're live.
Thank you, Todd. We're completely debt-free right now and, making pretty good money. We're